Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio, where we keep you informed, engaged, and entertained while we all sit around and talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Welcome to July. It's going to be a great show for you today, our first episode in the month of July. Today's episode, number 355, is titled Inside Development Camp, a prospect analyst's take on the Habs 2025 draft class. That's right, we have a very special guest once again joining us on the show today. I'm going to get to all of that detail about what that is in just a minute. But first, let's take care of some business. Let's make some introductions. If you are new here, my name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be your host for today's show. And I'm always pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is our founder and president here at Rocket Sports. His name is Rick Stevens. Happy July. Happy belated Canada Day and Independence Day, no matter where our listeners are listening and viewing from. And how you doing?
Yeah, happy belated Independence Day to you.
Thank
and
you.
to all of our listeners south of the border. We have, looking at the stats, we have a lot of Canadiens fans in the U.S., and we're pleased that you join us each and every week. Mm-hmm. And especially today, as you said, it's July. It means that it's the first episode of this podcast, Canadiens Connection, of our 8th season. And we're pretty proud of that.
Absolutely. Season 8.
And
but it goes back further than that.
It certainly does. We, with Rocket Sports, we have been in this podcast game for a very long time. In fact, longer than the longest continuing Montreal Canadiens podcast. The roots of the Canadiens Connection go back to 2012. We had Habs 360. And then just over 8 years ago, we changed the format, made it the Canadiens Connection, and to represent that we're that bridge between the fans and the organization, using the connections that we have throughout the hockey world. And every Saturday since 2012, we've had a podcast for you about the Montreal Canadiens. And
we are very excited to be kicking off our 8th season. We start our new seasons in July. Mm-hmm. Our I want to call it our fiscal year, but our calendar year for the podcast is July through the end of June, which is kind of the hockey season. Like the new hockey season kind of really starts July 1st at free agency. And so that's when our new seasons start in July. And so you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, but it's summertime now. Well, that's right. It is summertime. We never kick off a brand new season the first week in July and then say, well, folks, have a nice summer. We'll see you in September. That doesn't happen here. We will be here every Saturday throughout the summer. There is always news to talk about in terms of the Montreal Canadiens. And we know that the majority of other hockey and Habs related podcasts go on hiatus for the summer in July and August. And that leaves all of the fans really hungry to talk about the Canadiens, even though it's the off season. Well, have no fear. We will be here. You can rely on us to be here.
We won't be abandoning you for the summer because if you're a Canadiens fan, and if you've been a Canadiens fan for a while, you know that there's plenty of news. There's plenty to talk about. And you may be going to the beach or on vacation or to the cottage or wherever. Well, you have the opportunity to take us with you. Our podcast comes out every Saturday on all the platforms, and then a day or so later on YouTube. So give you plenty of opportunities to listen to and get your fix of Canadiens content over the summer months.
So with all of that said, just make sure, if you've done nothing else, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. We will be your place to go for Canadiens podcasting throughout the summer, throughout the hockey season. And we are happy to have you along on that ride, and happy to have you along for our 8th season of the show, which starts today. So we do have a jam-packed show for you today. There has been a lot of news that's happened between today and last week, which was the draft. And so we're going to get you caught up on all of the roster movement, and there was certainly a lot of it. We're going to talk about the roster news, but then we also have development camp that took place this week. We have free agency that took place that opened this week. We're going to hear from prospects from Brassard who were there for development camp, and also get you caught up on some other news from around the NHL. All of that, of course, in the first segment. And then in our second segment, well, would you believe it? We have another exclusive interview for you this week. This would be exclusive interview number 5 in the last 3 weeks. We're just rocking and rolling with them here. We have very leading prospect analyst Chris Peters is going to join us in the second segment. He is over at he's the content manager over at Flo Hockey, but he is a draft and prospect analyst, one of the best in the business, and he's going to be here with us in the second segment to evaluate the selections that the Canadiens did make in the draft. We had a number of experts before the draft talk about who would be the best fit for the Canadiens. Well, now that the Canadiens have made their picks, we have a prospect analyst here to talk about why those picks are going to be good ones for the Montreal Canadiens. You're not going to want to miss that coming up in the second segment. And so I think we should probably get right to it. Let's kick things off with just we're going to take you a little back in time, because it was, free agency happens on Canada Day. It is also, Independence Day holiday week for the Americans. So there are a lot of people who were probably on holiday this past week. So maybe you missed some of the roster news that happened. So we're going to take you through it in case you missed anything. And we're going to start off with qualifying offers. This was before free agency opened. The Canadiens needed to decide who they were going to tender a qualifying offer to in terms of their pending RFAs, their restricted free agents. And so they did that with 5 of their RFAs. They did a qualifying offer for Sean Farrell, Jaden Struble, William Trudeau, Jakub Dobeš, and Caden Primo. And so, Rick, that meant that there were 4 players, 4 pending RFAs who did not. There were 9 total, so 5 got a qualifying offer. There were 4 who did not.
And those 4, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, Xavier Simoneau, Gustav Lindstrom, and Noel Hoffenmeyer. The important part here is there shouldn't be any surprises for those of you who have been listening to the podcast or following along with the coverage. All of the Farrell, Struble, Trudeau, Dobeš, and Primo, 4 of them, I would say, earned the right to have a qualifying offer, and there was circumstances around the other one. And Harvey-Pinard, Simoneau, Lindstrom, and Hoffenmeyer did not. Harvey-Pinard went on to sign with Pittsburgh. Lindstrom, we already knew, was signing with Djurgården. All of that makes good sense.
Absolutely. And then within pretty quick doing, the Canadiens signed 2 of those RFAs to contract extensions, 1-year, 2-way contracts for forward Sean Farrell and defenseman William Trudeau. And I would say good job on both of those.
1-year, 2-way contracts. Mm-hmm. You know what that means. And William Trudeau, I think, bypassed on in the pipeline by a lot of other defensemen, but he still is competent at the AHL level. Yes. And probably, if need be, push came to shove, he could be recalled sometime during the year. Sean Farrell had kind of a breakout season.
Yeah, he did.
And started slow, but then his offense exploded. The question's always asked, can you have a Cole Caulfield and a Sean Farrell on the same roster? Maybe not, but he showed enough that he has potential, and perhaps one of those pieces in a trade going elsewhere, or if offense is needed, Sean Farrell is there for a call-up.
Absolutely. Now, one of those 5 pending RFAs that they did tender a qualifying offer for was goaltender Caden Primo, as we said. However, we knew it was getting to the point where push was going to start coming to shove with this, I wouldn't call it a logjam at the prospect level for goaltending with the Canadiens, but there was getting to be too many chefs in the kitchen. Something was going to need to happen somewhere, and it does not surprise me that it was Caden Primo who ended up being the trade ship. The Canadiens trading him to the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for a 7th round draft pick. If that tells you how far Caden Primo's stock has unfortunately fallen over the past couple of seasons.
And Primo then went on to sign a 1-year contract again. Not a lengthy contract, not a multi-year contract, just a 1-year contract with Carolina as they give him an opportunity to prove himself.
And I say good luck to Caden Primo.
Of course.
Maybe, Caden Primo has very good abilities. Maybe the change of scenery will do him good. And we'll certainly be watching to see how he does next year. But think it's probably best for him to be out of the spotlight in Montreal and make the move to Carolina. So good luck to him. Once free agency opened on Tuesday, the Canadiens were relatively quiet on free agency day. They did make a couple of both of these players got a 1-year, one-way NHL contract, but if we're being honest, we'll likely see these two in the AHL. That's where they have the most of their experience. That would be forward Sammy Blais and goaltender Kaapo Kähkönen.
Sammy Blais, 29 years old. He's got size. He's a physical forward. He's known as an agitator. So maybe if you're thinking that you need to replace Michael Pezzetta, but we remember how much Michael Pezzetta played for the Montreal Canadiens last season. Sammy didn't play at all in the NHL last year. All of his action came with the Abbotsford Canucks. In the AHL, 51 games there. And of course, that team, Abbotsford, winning the Calder Cup. So, yeah, you probably expect him to spend, whether he's a healthy scratch in Montreal or better served in the AHL. The other person you mentioned, a goaltender, Kaapo Kähkönen, again, he didn't play. Well, he played 1 game for the Habs last year and was beaten up in that game, and then spent the rest of the season 2 games with the Colorado Eagles and 22 games with the Manitoba Moose, and certainly not stellar stats there. And we remember him with San Jose and the New Jersey organizations, and he seemed to lose a sense of playing AHL goal, but went to also the Charlotte Checkers last year, and was the goaltender who stymied the Laval Rocket. So whether that had anything to do with him signing with Montreal or not, I don't know. But there's 2 ways that this can work out. Jacob Fowler is going to get the majority of the starts in Laval, and they were looking for a good veteran to mentor him and help back him up. So he could, Kähkönen could spend most of the time in Laval, or if Jakub Dobeš did an outstanding job when he came in first for Primo, and then we remember Sam Montembeault was injured in the playoffs, and he more than held his own and held the Canadiens in as best as he could against the Capitals in the playoffs. So Dobeš deserves the chance to start in Montreal. But if the plan is for Sam Montembeault to get 3/4, 80% of the starts, then why have Dobeš sitting on the bench? You can just as easily put Kähkönen in there. So we'll see which school of thought once we get to the fall.
But interesting, and okay, I can understand. Both are players who went all the way to the Calder Cup final in the AHL. So that tells you at least the kind of quality of team and good experience that they've had, at least in the last year. One of them actually winning the Calder. So,
and remember, it was basically Charlotte, who was a veteran team, ousting Laval, who was, the upstart, the winner of the best team during the regular season. But, they showed that their immaturity, although I can't say that because it was the veterans that were taking all the penalties, but the lack of discipline really hurt them when they faced some of the more mature teams.
And prior to ousting Laval, Charlotte had just gotten done sweeping the Hershey Bears, who were the back-to-back defending. They were looking for a three-peat on the Calder. So Charlotte had a very strong team, and Abbotsford did as well. So it'll be. I'm very interested to watch to see how Sammy Blais and Kaapo Kähkönen contribute to the organization this coming season. Now, in terms of, so that took care of the pending RFAs and a couple of pickups on free agency day. Now there were 6 players for the Canadiens that were on the roster June 30th who became unrestricted free agents on July 1st. And Rick, I believe all of them have since signed elsewhere.
Yeah, we have Yoel Armia, who went to the Kings. I think that's a good spot for him.
I agree. Kings did a lot. The Kings loaded up.
Yeah. Alex Barré-Boulet, who still believes he's an NHL player. He signed a 2-way deal in Colorado. Christian Dvorak, they were pleased to get him in Philadelphia.
Well, I like that signing.
Brandon Gignac told everybody at the end of the season that he had stacks of offers from Europe. He's gone to Cloton. Connor Hughes kind of bailed early and signed a 5-year deal with Lausanne. And then Michael Pezzetta signed hometown. Toronto guy signed with the Maple Leafs.
Now, here's what I want to know. Is there going to be a Leafs-Habs game this year that Arbor and Pez are going to be on the ice at the same time?
Yeah.
And if so, how's that going to work?
Well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
It'll be fun. But I say, congratulations to all of those guys. There's a couple of those signings that I really like. And for Pezzetta, let's hope for his sake he gets a little more playing time with Toronto and doesn't have to watch from the suite quite so often. The New York Islanders starting to quietly accumulate some former Canadiens. We do know, of course, we talked about last week that Emil Heineman was traded to the Islanders. Well, the Islanders then went ahead and signed a contract extension with him.
2-year contract worth $1.1 million per season for Emil Heineman. He was someone that the Islanders, Matthew Darche, insisted be included in the trade. They wanted him and signed him to a contract, and we'll see how he fares there and what kind of playing time he's going to get with the Islanders.
In addition to that, the Islanders added another forward to their roster who, in semi-recent history, was part of the Montreal Canadiens roster, and that is Jonathan Drouin, who is no longer with the Colorado Avalanche.
Signed a 2-year deal with the New York Islanders.
All right. Then the big trade that did take place on free agency day, and I say big because this is, at least in my chair, this was big because I will say I because I don't like to speak for Rick, but I'm sure he'll say we have been harping on this for weeks and weeks now that whatever you do, please don't trade away Logan Mailloux. He needs to have his actual legitimate shot at training camp this fall. And I really believed that, particularly after Logan Mailloux was not included in the Noah Dobson trade, I let my guard. I will admit, I let my guard down, and I thought, okay, if he didn't get traded for the Noah Dobson trade, then phew, we've made it. Well, Kent decided to prove me wrong because the Canadiens traded defenseman Logan Mailloux to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for forward Zach Bolduc.
So we were just talking about Emil Heineman. Emil Heineman, strong skater. He was great on the forecheck, and that's why Marty St. Louis really appreciated having him on that fourth line. Started the fourth line often to get them out there. He had a good shot. Remember the first half of the season, he was among the leaders in goal scoring by rookies. Emil Heineman, physical player, really good defensively, and all of those, most of those characteristics, you might be able to say about Zach Bolduc as well. Bolduc's got a good shot. He skates well. He forechecks well. Not the same physical game, although he says that it's something he's trying to incorporate into his game. I think he had in the neighborhood of 100 hits last season. Heineman with about double that, so far more physical. And I think you can probably say that Zach Bolduc has more offensive instinct to him. That said, that we remember Heineman's injury is unfortunate incident with a car. He had more goals by New Year's Eve than Zach Bolduc had. 9 goals by December 31st versus Bolduc's 5 goals in his first half of the season. So if you're wanting to replace a Heineman, Bolduc seems pretty good. Now, were you one of the ones who stayed up until midnight on the 30th of June? Put your hands up. I saw a lot of Canadiens fans. Because word was there was more than just smoke out there. It was, and coming from both St. Louis sources, Canadian sources, that the Canadiens were trying to land Jordan Kyrou. And we know that the mandate for the Montreal Canadiens this summer was to find a second line center. We heard it from Kent Hughes. We heard it from, even at the draft, Bob Roth and Lapointe were saying their mandate was to find a second line center. And so all the buzz was about the Canadiens trading some sort of package that included Mike Matheson to St. Louis for Jordan Kyrou. And the rush, the reason that there was the midnight deadline is because Jordan Kyrou's trade clause kicked in on July 1st. Canadiens fans were disappointed, to say the least, when that didn't happen. And yes, we're not. Nobody's pretending that Zach Bolduc fulfills the mandate of second line center. Well, he's a winger. Or even a second line player necessarily. Probably, most scouts have him as a bottom 6 player. He played a lot of third line last year. His rookie season had a very good season, 19 goals. But he has a lower ceiling than a player like Logan Mailloux, who was the piece that St. Louis demanded in this trade. And it's fascinating for me because a name that maybe Canadiens fans may have heard, may not have heard, is Bobby Kinsella. Bobby Kinsella was a scout for the Montreal Canadiens for a while. We met Bobby Kinsella on occasion at the rinks. We met him in Philadelphia at the draft. Mm-hmm. And Bobby Kinsella, prior to becoming a scout with the Montreal Canadiens, was a coach at Dubuque in the USHL. And his player that he coached was Mike Matheson at Dubuque. Then, when he was a scout with Montreal goes out and gets Mike Matheson. But while Kinsella was with Montreal, that's also when they drafted Logan Mailloux. Where's Bobby Kinsella these days? Well, he's a scout with the St. Louis Blues. So it's fascinating to me that this Doug Armstrong wasn't willing to do a trade to bring on Mike Matheson, someone that you have to say Bobby Kinsella knows intimately. And they preferred instead to bring in Logan Mailloux for a cheaper price. Obviously, they didn't have to give up Jordan Kyrou. Fascinating. I think that's absolutely fascinating. As far as Logan Mailloux, you got to admire his perseverance, his determination, his focus, all of what was thrown at him. He did everything he was asked and more. He's become a model citizen. The Canadiens no longer have a player with his skill set in their organization. He has a very unique skill set. You heard Doug Armstrong talking about the fact that he believes. Well, first of all, Doug Armstrong said Logan Mailloux was obviously one of the best defensemen in the American Hockey League last season. He went to the AHL All-Star game as Laval's representative. Doug Armstrong referenced the fact that Logan Mailloux was named to the AHL top prospect team that voted on by coaches and managers who believe the players that are going to have the most impact in the NHL when they get there. Doug Armstrong said that Logan is NHL ready, that he has an NHL job, that he believes he's has the potential to be a top four defenseman and more. Was his exact words.
And I'm just going to interject there and say, yes, that is what we have been hammering for the last weeks and months. Those are all the reasons why Logan Mailloux should have stayed with the Canadiens.
Well, and what's his special skill set? That he's big, he plays physical, he's mean, he's gritty, he skates beautifully, he can move the puck, and he's got a cannon of a shot. Does he have more to learn about reads on the defensive side? Sure he does. But he's young, and that will come. Does Mike Matheson have more to learn about reads in his defensive play? And it's not going to happen. Mike Matheson is Mike Matheson with his risky play time and time again.
And for me, if you're looking at the two right-handed prospects, Mailloux or Reinbacher, and this is nothing against Reinbacher or his skill set, but I take a Logan Mailloux over a David Reinbacher any day of the week for the Canadiens roster.
Yeah, Reinbacher can play physical. He doesn't have that meanness. He doesn't, the ability to stand up for teammates and that sort of thing. Reinbacher, more skilled, will play physical. You got to worry about his injury history a little bit. I think, and I think that Logan Mailloux would have been the insurance for that.
Yep.
Going forward. But all that said, I think I'm not terribly thrilled with this trade, in that I think that the Canadiens have players similar to Zach Bolduc. They don't have anybody like Logan Mailloux, and that's and the fact that maybe the projection of Zach Bolduc is more certain, and that's why that low ceiling, low risk. That Logan Mailloux is more risk but has a far higher ceiling, is the way that scouts have characterized it.
And Mike Matheson is still on the roster.
and he's redundant. There's I don't. Anyway, we'll get to that. One more bit about Doug Armstrong. He believes so much in the potential of Logan Mailloux that St. Louis then went out and waived Nick Leddy, put him on waivers to make room for Logan Mailloux on the NHL roster. Incredible. That's what a
good job, Doug Armstrong.
Yeah. That you make way for your prospects and you don't put obstacles in their way. Rob Ramage, who's the Canadiens director of player development and who's a pretty smart man, and he had a very good relationship with Logan Mailloux and helped him through difficult times. He was asked, was at the development camp and was asked about Logan Mailloux, and he said he had a good talk with Logan on the afternoon of the trade. And said how proud he was of him. And he said, listen, I live in St. Louis. I'm going to cook Logan a steak. So I thought that was a lot of fun.
It is. And while I'm disappointed in the decision to trade him, I say, good luck, Logan Mailloux. I love that he's going to get a shot at an NHL job, and this is one of those occasions where I hope that he turns around and proves the Canadiens wrong on this one. I hope he enjoys a lot of success, and I think with the right in the right organization and in the right system, I think he's going to. So I think he's definitely going to be one that I'm going to be watching out of the corner of my eye this coming season.
Yeah, I hope Logan Mailloux meets all those expectations that Doug Armstrong has, and I hope that Zach Bolduc exceeds the expectations of the experts. They have him pegged as a bottom six, maybe at the very outside. If you squint a little bit, middle six player. I hope he exceeds expectations and thrives and adds some dimensions to his skill set that he doesn't have at this point.
So that is Zach Bolduc and Noah Dobson, newcomers onto the Canadiens NHL roster for sure this fall. And so with that meant that we had some jersey number announcements this week. And Zach Bolduc is chosen to wear number 76.
All right. There's a choice. Listen, 76 has been given out before. PK Subban's number to players in a development camp, but hasn't been 76 on the Canadiens roster since PK. So I'm sure that will
ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, I think so. But it's time.
Now I remember you had said to me, "Oh, is Noah Dobson going to wear his number 8?"
Well, we can all hope, we can hope,
but no,
and maybe he will yet someday.
Well, he could always change eventually. Sooner rather than later would be fine with me.
But I was thinking maybe 88. But no, he's going back to his junior numbers. So, and we all love Victor Mete, didn't we?
Yes, Noah Dobson is going to wear number 53. That was last worn by young Victor Mete.
And Victor Mete played on the first pairing. He shouldn't have been there, but he did.
He did. Oh, we had such high hopes for young Victor Mete.
Mm-hmm.
We did. So Kent Hughes, that was that was the sum total. That was the biggest splash on free agency day for the Canadiens was trading away Logan Mailloux, their top defensive prospect, in Logan Mailloux. Kent Hughes seems to be pretty okay with how things are going this summer.
Yeah, he said he's comfortable starting the season with this roster, although that flies in the face of certainly what both Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton said at their end of season media availabilities. This was supposed to be a very big summer, and Kent Hughes talked about the search for a 2C. top six forward. Jeff Gordon, remember he said, maybe we'll just go out and try and get a 100-point winger. And that's the way we'll solve the problem. Well, they did neither. And so we'll see. I mean, maybe Mike Matheson and some assets can be parlayed together over the summer, but it might have to wait. The solution for the second line center may have to wait until November, maybe till the trade deadline. We'll see.
All right. Well, so if Kent Hughes is comfortable starting the season with this roster, which let's just also read between the lines there. Comfortable means if I have to start the season with this roster, I'm okay with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that I can't still improve it.
Yeah, he's going to be trying all summer but it's proven very difficult so far because there are not a lot of sellers, as we talked about as we led up to the draft coverage.
That's right. So let's just, in a hypothetical situation, because everybody's playing the hypothetical game right now because everybody's antsy. Let's hypothetically say, okay, Kent says he's comfortable if he has to start the season with this roster. So if he had to start the season with this roster, Rick, I know you wanted to throw your hat in the ring because there's plenty of others who want to do this as well. At just kind of taking that way too early first crack at what this roster could maybe look like in terms of a lineup come October.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know if this is a cross between what I think's best or what I think Marty St. Louis is going to do. But I think the mistake that a lot of people, and as you said, there's a lot of people taking a crack at this. I think what the mistake folks make is that you shouldn't start with a blank slate and say, oh, I think this player should go here and this player. There are some facts that we know already that force your hand here. And I think those, firstly, I think the unless there's changes, unless somebody really stands out at training camp, unless there's a trade, there are two lines that are already set. And, Marty likes to, he likes certainty. He likes to know that things are going to work. He doesn't like to experiment too much. So let's just set the first line. It will be set. Will he experiment a little? Maybe. But it's easiest to put Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Juraj Slafkovsky down on paper that's the most likely first line that we're going to see come opening night. I mean,
yeah,
it works. It has all the different elements. And those three were playing together, and they have some chemistry. Did Juraj Slafkovsky have some brief chemistry? What is it now? 3 years ago with Kirby Dach for a bit in training camp. Yeah, he did, but I think there's a lot more evidence the other way that Slafkovsky fits and plays his best with Suzuki and Caulfield. Mm-hmm. The other line, and whether you call them the third line or fourth line, and Marty doesn't necessarily like labels either, is Jake Evans with Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson.
Yeah.
The lineup that Marty was the line that Marty was really comfortable with last year was Christian Dvorak between Anderson and Gallagher. And those guys were, again, the chemistry's there, the knowing each other, playing well. So Dvorak's not around. Jake Evans is, I think he's a little bit better than Dvorak, but he and Brendan Gallagher already have played together and have good chemistry, and Jake Evans can slide right in there with Gallagher and Anderson and not miss a beat. So for the purposes of this this exercise. Let's call them the fourth line. And like I said, it doesn't really matter. I'm happy to move them to the third line if people are going to argue about it. That's not important. It's the trios that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves a bunch of players to try
shoehorn
and fit
into 6 positions.
Yeah. What else do we know? What are the givens? Well, a given is that I don't think we want to see Kirby Dach play with Patrik Laine.
No.
I that didn't work. That was a giant disaster. And so you can just X that out of your thinking. The other thing is that we don't know if Kirby Dach. I mean, Kirby Dach's going to get a lot of opportunities to succeed, but we heard Jeff Gorton that Kirby has to prove himself at training camp. Kirby has to be ready to go. Said he has to be prepared. And it doesn't sound like he's going to have a long leash. And I don't think that they know whether he's a center or a winger or what. I think the same can apply to Alex Newhook. Is he a winger? He looked good at times when playing on the wing with Suzuki and Caulfield. Alex Newhook played at the end of the season with Ivan Demidov. And there was some, a bit of chemistry there because Alex Newhook is good on the forecheck and can go retrieve the puck, and is smart enough to understand the creativity of a Demidov. So let's put those 3 together: Alex Newhook, Kirby Dach, and Ivan Demidov. And it doesn't. You decide who you want to put at center. I think those 2 will rotate. Neither one of them is very proficient at faceoffs. I think that they'll be interchangeable. They'll support each other, and that's the best way to get the most. Ivan Demidov's going to be on the second line.
Yeah.
I think that those 2 players, Kirby Dach uses physicality, makes some room for the young player, Alex Newhook, on the forecheck, puck retrieval, and the creativity of Demidov. That's my second line.
I like it. So that leaves, for all intents and purposes, the third line, or as you say, if people want to take Jake Evans' line and put it on the third line, then this could sometimes be the fourth line. What we're looking at is the trios, and here we have, I think, an interesting line because it will incorporate 2 players who would be new to the NHL roster for the Canadiens this season.
Yeah. Now, if you're playing Newhook and Dach on the same line, and one of them's going to be a center and one of them's going to be a winger, you need another center. Who was the center at the end of the season who didn't look out of place? I'll tell you where he looked out of place. I'm talking about Oliver Kapanen. He looked out of place in the AHL. He was too good for the AHL. Mm-hmm. When he was brought to the Canadiens roster at the end of the season, he didn't look out of place at all. The Canadiens had him at center. They liked him at center. He's good defensively, very good defensively. He's a good skater. And so that might make up for some of Patrik Laine's deficiencies on the defensive side. And what about a Zach Bolduc, Oliver Kapanen, Patrik Laine trio that would be, if Bolduc is focusing on his offensive game, and he's a shooter. You've got Patrik Laine, he's a shooter, and you've got Kapanen, who's a very good puck distributor. That seems like that, for me, would be the best of all worlds. And that would leave one spot as an extra, which Michael Pezzetta filled. Poor guy last year. And again, you decide who that might be. If it's a Sammy Blais who's a healthy scratch a fair bit, or if you want, one of the young players, whether it be an Owen Beck, or and there's going to be a lot of excitement about Florian Xhekaj, I'm sure, at camp. Whether you want one of the young players with a kind of a regular rotation into the roster, we'll see.
All right. Well, so that takes care of the forwards. In terms of the back end, the blue liners, first pairing I think is probably pretty no argument.
Yeah, this one's easy, and with all due respect to the folks who want Lane Hutson and Noah Dobson to play together, you need a little bit of physicality.
Yes,
you need some. Noah Dobson is good size, not a physical player, and we heard his former junior coach say the perfect partner for him is Caden Gooley. Caden Gooley, who can dish out the punishment and take those tough minutes against the best of the opposition, and Noah Dobson that can move the puck out of the zone. Caden Gooley on the left, playing his natural side. Noah Dobson on the right, playing his natural side. It's no question in my mind that those two are the 5-on-5 pairing that you want out there most often. Will we see Lane Hutson with Noah Dobson? Sure. When the Canadiens are behind and they need offense, those two can provide it. But day in, day out, I think the easiest decision to make here is Caden Gooley with Noah Dobson.
Which would leave Lane Hutson on the second pairing, but who would his partner be?
This one's difficult because Lane Hutson, you need some physicality on that second pairing. Ideally, this spot is reserved for David Reinbacher. David Reinbacher will be Lane Hutson's partner. And we saw them together at development camp. Not the recent one, but a while back. The Canadiens want Hutson with Reinbacher because Reinbacher would provide that physicality. But I think it's fair to say that given the injury concern, unless David Reinbacher has a unbelievable camp, David Reinbacher, because of his injury situation, has played 21 regular season games in the American Hockey League. That seems
period.
That seems hard to believe, but he needs more time.
Yeah.
And he may need a lot more time. So we need a placeholder in there. We need someone in there who's going to play a physical brand. And unfortunately, that isn't Alex Carrier. It isn't Mike Matheson. It's Jayden Struble. And we saw Jayden Struble play with Lane Hutson at a fair bit of the time this past season. Jayden Struble, who is big, has the size, has the strength, doesn't necessarily like playing physically, but forced into it in this situation to stay in the lineup and to have some minutes. I think Jayden Struble would learn to like to play a physical brand of hockey, and he's certainly capable of doing so. So the placeholder, Struble with Lane Hutson.
That leaves us with a third pairing that I will gladly see Kent Hughes make improvements on at any time he can possibly do so.
That puts Mike Matheson on the left side, Alex Carrier, who filled in admirably last year on the right side, which would be a good third pairing. That's a successful defensive core if you've got Matheson and Carrier on the third pair. As I've said before, Mike Matheson he no longer has a place in this lineup. Talk about placeholders. He's served that role admirably. But you've got Dobson and Hutson to supply the offense for 5-on-5 for the power play. Mike Matheson's not needed in that role anymore. And yeah, was he trying to learn to play on the PK last year? I guess. But Mike Matheson, there's for him to be playing 25 minutes a game would be a disservice to a Dobson and Hutson. I've heard the complaint, well, it's a contract year for Mike Matheson. You can't put him on the third line and have him playing fewer minutes. Well, the M in Montreal Canadiens does not stand for Montreal, does not stand for Mike Matheson. It stands for Montreal, and the brass have to do what's best for the Montreal Canadiens, not what's best for Mike Matheson's contract year. That's why I think he should be traded before the season starts, or at the very least, traded before the trade deadline in March.
Unless he'd like to come out with some miraculous improvement this fall and actually earn something, but I don't see that
Matheson
happening.
is who Mike Matheson is.
That's right.
And that leaves Arbor Xhekaj
right.
as the extra.
Which we saw him kind of, he was getting rotated in and out towards the end of the season anyway. So that
and give him the penalty kill minutes. Who he was learning. He was learning from David Savard, and I'd like to see him have a bigger role there.
Absolutely.
And we should just, there's going to be injuries. There's going to be, we know all of that. But knowing what we know now, at this early stage, this is kind of what's shaking out.
Yeah. Leaving in goal, we touched on this already. Sam Montembeault probably obviously getting the majority of the starts. And you have, as you talked about earlier when we were talking about Kaapo Kähkönen, you have Jakob Dobeš slotting in as the tandem, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Dobeš has earned it. We'll see. There'll be a battle in camp, and we'll see what happens in training camp. I think if it's Dobeš, I'd like to see a more equitable split, a 1/3, 2/3 split, because he sat far too long.
Way too much.
He needs to play. If they're going to give, as I said earlier, if they're going to give Montembeault so many starts and let somebody sit, let it be Kähkönen rather than Dobeš.
Absolutely. All right, so it's been a while since we've had a roster news segment that is that meaty, but there was a lot that went down in terms of the roster this past week. So now let's shift gears and let's take a dip into the Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
And so we're going to kick off the prospect report with the newest crop of prospects and the youngest of the prospects, and those would be the ones who attended the Canadiens development camp this past week. It took place July 1st through 3rd at the CN Sports Complex in Brossard. There were 31 players at camp this year, 15 forwards, 12 defensemen, 4 goaltenders. And 8 of the 9 players who were selected last weekend at the 2025 NHL draft were in attendance. Alexander Zhuravsky, the only one not able, unfortunately, to attend the development camp. All of the rest of the guys were there. And it was the same kind of grouping that we've seen in the past, Rick. There was testing, there was off-ice workouts, a little bit of on-ice practice, and, of course, the always popular intra-squad scrimmage. And it seemed to be a pretty rousing success once again this year.
For sure. And it was an opportunity for Canadiens fans. All the sessions were, other than the off-ice workouts and testing, the on-ice sessions were open to the public. And it was the first opportunity for Canadiens fans to see 8 of the 9 players who were selected by the Canadiens at the 2025 NHL draft just a week ago.
Mm-hmm. You talked about Rob Ramage a moment ago in his comments about Logan Mailloux's trade. But as you mentioned, he is the director of player development, which means the development camp is a big event for Rob Ramage, overseeing all of that. And he had some interesting information that he covered in his development camp press conference.
He's been doing this for 11 years now, he said, and he's learned some things and he's made some changes. I think for fans, the first thing, if you've been going for a number of years. You'll notice that this year's camp was one day less.
Yep.
It was a shorter camp. The sessions, they grouped the forwards, defensemen, and 4 goaltenders. And just as far as the goaltenders, for me, loved the fact that there was 4 drafted goaltenders. Typically, there's a lot of invites in the goaltender section and with a variety of talent levels. But to see the 4 goaltenders, including 2 from, one from Russia, 1 from Latvia, Volokin, Vekvinax, Arsenio Radkov. I guess that would be 3 from the Russian area, and Alexei Kornoye. 4 goaltenders. That was a lot of fun. But one day less, and Ramage said no more 2-a-days, which they had done in the past. They spent far more time in the classroom, giving them instruction on expectations, on the kind of team that they're building. They spent a lot of time talking about the Florida Panthers and why they're successful. And they also got sessions on nutrition and what they should be doing in the weight room. And they had Marty St. Louis come in and give them a little pep talk. And there was a sense that this was, I think, an attempt by Rob Ramage. He said in the past, these 2-a-days and very intense practices and scrimmages and whatnot led to injuries. So they wanted to reduce the intensity at development camp, give out a lot more information, but by reducing the intensity, also reducing the chance of injury. And I think
that's smart.
Very smart.
I think it's definitely smart. I understand that the team also uses development camp to kind of do a little bit of a check-in and evaluate, okay, how has this player, how has each player progressed over the last year? Where have they moved in the pipeline and in the depth chart, that type of thing. But I think they're able to make those evaluations without making development camp a grind. And quite frankly, these kids are young. And once they go back to their European team or their college team or their junior team, I think having the classroom type things be more of a focus is probably more useful to them for the rest of the year. Nutrition, weight room, the things that the Canadiens want them to work on, whether it's on or off the ice. I think that's probably all very valuable to prospects at that age. So I'm all for the way Rob Ramage has restructured everything this year.
Just wanted to add one quote, one comment that Rob Ramage made, because it was kind of revealing, and he said at the time, "I hope I'm not speaking out of turn," and of course he was, and he does that sort of thing. But he said,
and who's going to yell at him?
Yeah. Of all the defensemen to talk about, and there's Bryce Pickford and Owen Protz and Carlos Handel and Bogdan Kanushkov, and he wanted to talk about Luke Mittelstadt. And Luke Mittelstadt was drafted in 2020. He was an overager from the University of Minnesota. And Luke Mittelstadt is going back to the University of Minnesota for his final year with the intent of trying to win a championship. And Rob Ramage said, I would have signed him if he wasn't returning to the University of Minnesota Gophers. And of course, that's not his decision to make and recommend that. But I found that really fascinating, that out of all the guys, and Luke Mittelstadt, you could tell that he's mature, he's older, poised on the ice, poised at the microphone. And I just thought that was a fascinating comment from Rob Ramage.
I like it. So can't go through the entire roster of 31 players who were there at camp, but we will pick out some individuals just to give you an idea of what kind of an impression they made at camp. And you spoke about the goaltenders. So let's start with goaltender Arsenio Radkov. He's one of the 2 goaltenders who were selected last weekend at the 2025 NHL draft by the Canadiens. And after being selected in the first round of the CHL import draft earlier this week by the Armada, Rick, the Armada then came out with an announcement later in the week
that Arseny Radkov has made arrangements that he will play for the Armada this fall. And we already know that he's going to be playing in the NCAA for UMass the following season. So that's pretty good experience. And really good to get his adjustment to the North American game underway already this season. Of course, he played in the MHL last season. We told you about him in last week's show. A very explosive goaltender, bit of a wild card, and yeah, and a fascinating guy in that his English is pretty good. He said he's been learning English since the age of 10. And he'll probably pick up some French as well, playing with the Armada. So this is this is again Vinny Riondo, another one of his finds, and a good start to his North American career this fall.
Absolutely. And yes, great for him that he gets to play in Quebec this year, going to UMass the following season, but it also makes it easier for the Canadiens organization to watch him and keep an eye on him with the fact that he's not going back to Russia this year. And it makes it easier for fans to watch him as well and start to get to know his play and follow his progression this year and next year. So a win all around. You mentioned Bryce Pickford when we were talking about Luke Mittelstadt, and Bryce Pickford showing some people what he's got at camp this week.
Yeah, he was that player that added a lot of offense to his game, exploded from 2 goals the previous season to 33, and he just looks very strong, very solid on his skates. And kind of funny because LJ Mooney took a run at him, but yeah, he's you can see why the Canadiens went out and got him where they did.
You also mentioned Bogdan Konyushkov. He definitely is all business.
He is.
He's a very serious young man.
Very serious and not flashy at all. Just very competent, very efficient. And we've talked about him a lot on the podcast this past year. He's very interesting off the ice, his interests, and just very serious on the ice. But this was his first camp and his first exposure to Montreal, and English he certainly tried. But he when asked about his future, he just said he's not looking forward. But he did this with the assistance of a translator.
That's right. Goaltender?
Yeah, it was goaltender Mikus.
Mikus Vatsvanaks who amazingly speaks beautiful English without even an accent. I had not heard Mikus speak before, and you'd never know that he's not a native English speaker. But he played translator for Bogdan Konyushkov, which was kind of fun.
And of course, he a little bit in the BCHL, but then with Acadie Bathurst in the Q last year. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
Next up, another very serious kind of all business guy is Philip Eriksson. Not one of the was it 2023 or 24 that he was drafted?
Philippe Eriksson was drafted in 2023, 165th overall.
And he's had some good experience playing in the Swedish Hockey League, and you can tell that he's just kind of head down doing the work and trying to improve each and every season.
Smart, he's a good skater, he has good hands, but you can tell that he's only 20 years old, but he's played in the SHL, he's played against men, he's solid, and we remember that we talked about him playing in the for the Lakers in the SHL, and then was loaned to Djurgården with the Allsvenskan League, and in the playoffs had 9 points in 16 games. So he was very strong there.
Now, if there is somebody that made sure that he stood out, boy, if this kid is not on your radar yet, he's quickly going to become one of your favorites. Young little LJ Mooney. He is big smile, great personality in an interview, but you will notice him on the ice.
And he was clearly the most skilled, absolutely the most skilled player. Now, size is going to be his nemesis here at 5'7", but super amount of skill, buzzing around, absolutely fearless. And it had all, Luke Mittelstadt said, if he was a couple of inches taller, he would have been top 5 in the draft. Atos Koivu and Michael Hage talked about the most surprising player being LJ Mooney. He stood out throughout camp.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to hear more about him from Chris Peters in the next segment when he joins us. So you'll want to hear what he has to say about him. Sam Harris.
Sam Harris, at 21 years of age, played the last couple seasons for the University of Denver. He had 35 points in 43 games last year, and just one of the most talented players at camp. Not a big guy, just under 6 feet, 185 pounds, but not afraid to play physically at all. And a 5th round pick by the Canadiens in 2023. Just lots of talent. And again, he had other players talking about. Philippe Eriksson said that Sam Harris and Michael Hage were, in his opinion, the 2 best players at camp.
Well, let's talk about Michael Hage, because he's obviously the name that everyone's got their eye on, because everyone is chomping at the bit to get him on the Canadiens roster and get him to make the jump from the NCAA over to the NHL. But he says he still has work to do.
Yeah, and Marty Lapointe says he has work to do, that he needs to improve his play away from the puck, that otherwise he's got a lot of skill and ready. Michael Hage was the training, the development camp looked easy for him. Didn't look like he was playing at full speed, and maybe there was the talk about kind of bringing the intensity down a notch. But yeah, he was just cruising and making everything look easy. He was listed at 190, but he says that since the end of the season, he's done a lot of work in the gym. He's been eating a lot, which he says is very difficult. And he's now close to 200 pounds. So he wants to be ready for his sophomore season in the NCAA. And again, without Kent Hughes going out and adding a second line center, all the faith, all the hope is sitting with Michael Hage at this point.
I'm just going to make a side note here, because you mentioned Michael Hage has been working on eating, getting those calories in, working out in the gym. He's up to 200 pounds. If you missed it, keep an eye in the CHL this year, because there was a defenseman who was drafted in the import draft who is 7 feet tall. Mm-hmm. A defenseman who is this kid's what, 18, 17, 18?
17, I believe.
17. 7 feet tall, 273 pounds. And he's 17, so he's not done growing. Let's just, can we just put those numbers? I can't
Alexander Kamanov, and of course there's the OHL's Brantford Bulldogs that are taking a chance on a 7-foot defender.
I cannot wait to see this kid on the ice. 7 feet, 273. Okay. This will be interesting.
Interesting. And on his on his Instagram. He had pictures with NHLers, current NHLers, and the one I like is Brent Burns, because Brent Burns is not
a big guy.
Yeah, he's not a small guy, and of course Karmanov is towering over Brent Burns.
Oh, it's amazing. Should note that Michael Hage and Owen Protz both have received invitations from Hockey Canada to the World Junior Summer Showcase, I believe.
Yeah, and they both have goals of being there for Canada at the World Juniors.
So, all right, you've heard from us about some of these future stars who are at development camp this week. Let's hear from some of them. First off, we have a couple of clips here from LJ Mooney. I said that this kid's got a big smile and a great personality in the interview. So let's let you hear him a little bit. First, this is LJ Mooney on what it was like for him to get drafted by the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, I was at home in Pittsburgh. All my sisters were there, everything. So they were obviously really excited also, but it was pretty cool to see that happen. I was so pumped. Like, to see this organization draft me, I couldn't have been more excited to have that happen.
You could hear the grin.
Yeah, giant smile on his face, and it was there, every day of development camp. Just so excited to be there, and certainly to be drafted, and with his family in Pittsburgh.
Everything was exciting for LJ Mooney, including just being at development camp.
How's that first taste of the Montreal Canadiens environment?
Yeah, it's unbelievable here. I mean, just to put on that jersey is a pretty special feeling, all the equipment. So, yeah, I loved it. I had a lot of fun out there just to see all the prospects and meet the coaches and everything, so it was great.
Just to see all the prospects like he's not one of them. Just a really great kid.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sure you wanted to comment on that as well, but just a really fun kid.
No, he's the kind of a player that you want to root for.
Mm-hmm.
The odds are stacked up against him, at his size. But the odds have been against him for a long time, his whole life, and he's managed to succeed, and to not only succeed, but to have the energy and the enthusiasm and the positive thoughts that he has. He's a fascinating prospect to watch.
Definitely. Another one of
he's going to be in Minnesota, by the way.
Yes.
I should add that.
So you'll be able to watch him play in the NCAA this year. Another one of last week's draft selections was at camp was Hayden Papanakis, and he actually had a chance to speak to reporters about who his hockey role models are.
Yeah, I have two guys. Adam Lowry's a big guy. He's a great leader on and off the ice. So being from Winnipeg, I love watching him and taking a lot of tips and details from his game. And I'd like to use that. And then Tage Thompson, also a bigger guy. He's a little bit more skilled than Adam is. So I try to get a mix of both those guys.
Interesting pick, and it was here where the Canadiens finally joined the party and got a guy who has some size. Close to 6'5" and close to 200 pounds. He's billed as a tough physical center, good defensive side, good puck skills, but you couldn't find two better role models for a player that has size and who likes to play a little bit physical, and particularly I like that he noted Adam Lowry's leadership skills, because that's obviously something that to emulate.
Just Hayden, don't let Adam hear you say, well, Tage has more skill than Adam.
Well, he's honest.
I liked that he was so absolutely blunt about that. Okay, thanks very much. Michael Hage, we wanted to hear a little bit from him and his plan for his sophomore season in the NCAA.
I would say, just rounding up my game, my defensive game, face-offs, just continue to try to be as dominant as I can and just do everything I can to help us win. And
you need to focus on your play away from the puck.
Yes.
As
Marty LaPointe
said. He also said his plan for this season is to win a national championship, and that, of course, that would be a goal of all the players going to the NCAA.
That's right. Now, if there was one player who had a bigger smile and was happier or just as happy as LJ Mooney about being in Montreal this week, being at development camp, boy, was it Atos Koivu. This kid is excited to be in Montreal, and here he is talking about just his impression of the city.
Just unbelievable. I mean, the moment I stepped from the airplane out to Montreal, it's just been amazing. I've been loving the city. I came here last week already. Kind of got to enjoy the city a little bit the first couple of days, and I've been loving it. I really don't want to leave, and the camp has been amazing. Everything has just been unbelievable.
He's very excited.
Really excited. Of course, too young when he left Montreal. And he noted there that he came early so he could get a feel of Montreal, and he had a pretty good tour guide in Saku.
I'm sure he has said to Saku, why have we not been in Montreal all these years?
Well, it was they came early. They toured around, went to the Bell Center, went to the gift shop. And the whole family was there, so it is a real opportunity for him, and he also got to see his dad being pursued by the autograph hounds and the folks that wanted pictures, and to see that fans, he said, they were mouthing, "There's Saku Koivu." And
they don't do that back in Finland. I would do that back in Finland.
Sure.
And so he was since he was in Montreal when he was a baby, he was asked if he remembers any of his time in Montreal from when he was a little guy.
Not that much, no. I remember our house. I remember, of course, the Bell Center. I remember a little bit of that. So it was nice. I got to see both. I got to see our house a couple of days ago, and we were yesterday at the Bell Center. And it was cool. It was very cool. Just unbelievable rink. Just speechless when I stepped in there. But it's been nice here. We saw a couple old friends, and like I said, I've just been loving it here, and wouldn't want to leave.
Sucker's gonna have to drag him to the airport to get him home.
And he said he went to see his old house. And of course, the very first time I met Atos Koivu was on Nuns Island. Saku, with his family, lived on Nuns Island. They're in a little cul-de-sac. I was in a different one right across the main street. And so I'd see them from time to time, see them outside the house. I would see the family at the playground, which was right across the street. And the first time I met Atos was at an IGA, the IGA on Nuns Island. And I've told this story before. I'll tell it quickly, that I was doing grocery shopping. I was comparing, I don't know, cans of tuna or something. I was focused in on trying to look, and a shopping cart slammed into the side of me, into my hip. And I wheeled around, and it was one of those extended shopping carts with kind of the amusement ride on the front, which the daughter was sitting in. And Saku was there at the head of the shopping cart with Atos Koivu on top, climbing on top of his head. So as a little toddler, and so Saku didn't see me there, and that's why he slammed into me. And he was, apologetic and introduced me to the kids, and I told him what a pleasure it was to meet him, and told him what I did, and he thanked me for all we did for the Canadiens, and then we were going in opposite directions down the aisle, and you kind of go aisle to aisle. And I ran into him in every single aisle, and he'd make an exaggerated, giving me a real wide berth, and we'd both laugh, and it was very funny that was my first meeting of young Atos Koivu.
And now,
Which I'm sure he doesn't recall.
he won't
at all,
recall,
no.
but now he's back, and you get to watch him now.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap up this segment in the Habs prospect report, we would be
Just
Sorry.
one more little anecdote
Sure.
that Atus gave, and he said the family went to the gift shop
this
at
is
the Bell
great.
Center, and they were looking specifically for Saku Koivu branded merchandise, and his sister, who's a little older, found Saku Koivu mugs, and she promptly bought them all up out of the Montreal Canadiens, the Bell Center gift store. Yeah.
Sorry if anybody else ever wanted one of those. You'll have to talk to the Koivu family about that. We would be remiss if we didn't touch on what Laval, Antoine Riviere did in free agency this week as well. Just going to run through this quickly because they've had a boatload of signings this summer, but we'll talk about some of the more notable ones. It seems to be the theme for Laval in recent seasons has been the reunion tour. We know Laurent Dauphin is back on an AHL contract, and he's actually. I've actually been more impressed with him in his second stint with Laval than I was with his first. Hoping I'll be able to say that about Alex Belzile, the former captain who last year was playing for the Hartford Wolfpack. The Canadiens have signed him to a 1-year, 2-way contract. We'll likely see him playing in Laval, as well as two defensemen, Nate Clermont and Mark Delgado.
Both who played in the AHL last season. So, and Alex with Hartford, all three players played in the AHL and expect to see them with Laval this season. And I'll just echo what you said. Alex Belzile, when with Laval on the last stint, when he was captain, was not, and under a different coach and whatnot, was very selfish player, very Alex Belzile first. He was not a team first player. And as you said, let's hope, like Laurent Dauphin, he understands better his role now this second time around.
I hope so. And on a team that had the lead in penalty minutes in the league last season, that's the one thing that Belzile is guilty of for sure, is he takes egregious amounts of penalties. So I'm hoping that he's going to cut that down this year.
He led the Hartford Wolfpack in penalty minutes last season. So that's got to go.
That's got to go. Laval also made some AHL level signings. We had mentioned that Xavier Simoneau was one of the Canadiens' UFAs. He has now re-signed with the organization, just an AHL contract. So Laval signed Xavier Simoneau, so he will be back, as well as Josh Jacobs, who has played a decent amount of kind of a double handful of games with Laval in the past.
26 games last season. Josh Jacobs, Xavier Simoneau, a restricted free agent. Just
Sorry, RFA, fine. Not UFA.
Yeah, and just filling out the roster. Wyatt Wiley from Belleville, Ryan O'Rourke from Iowa, and another familiar name.
Reunion tour continues.
Yeah, he played with Syracuse Crunch last year. Toby Paquette, Bisson, defenseman, and all of them signed to 1-year, 1-way AHL contracts.
Toby is going to be another one that I hope has an improvement and an attitude adjustment in this second stint back. If you recall, 2 seasons ago, he, I think, I don't know this for sure, but I don't know that anyone appreciated that he was very critical of the ice time that prospects were getting towards the end of the season. He was openly critical in post-game interviews about how the veterans needed to be getting more time than the prospects were. So I'm hoping that, again...
And that was under JFU, who loved his veterans.
Yes.
That was, yeah.
I have a feeling Pascal Vincent's not going to put up with any of that kind of stuff. So I am, again, fingers crossed that some of those issues will have remedied themselves this year, and hope that there's a more positive locker room environment. Also, the Laval Rocket have signed 3 guys to 1-year, 2-way AHL contracts. That simply means that they are likely to start the season down in Trois-Rivières in the ECHL, but they'll be available for call-ups for injuries and so forth. That is forward Mark Estapa, defenseman Derek Louis-Jean, and goaltender Hunter Jones.
And Hunter Jones was key for Trois-Rivières in winning their championship, the Kelly Cup last season.
Yes, he was. And so we'll see how all of that rounds out Laval's roster as we get closer to the start of the season, but starting to shape up for sure. All right, before we wrap up this segment and bring our special guest, Chris Peters, into the studio, just a couple of quick notes from around the NHL. Frank Saravelli reporting this week that the NHL has advised all interested parties. You're not done with expansion yet, are you, in the league? Well, expansion fee is now a whopping $2 billion, not million, $2 billion. And there are 5 cities who have at least expressed interest.
Yeah, the fee hasn't shocked them or put them off. 5 cities, none from north of the border. You have Atlanta, Houston, Indianapolis, New Orleans, and now Austin, Texas, also throwing its hat into the ring. And as always, Gary Bettman said, we're not seeking to initiate a formal process. We have no pending applications. But, if you're interested, just be ready with your $2 billion.
Yeah. And of course, yes, free agency opened on Tuesday. And I think you have aptly titled this line item on the agenda as the free agent fizzle.
Yeah, if you saw
it was a rough day for James Duthie and crew.
The TSN coverage, James Duthie appropriately opened the show with crossing names off the board, off of the free agent board that were already signed before the free agent frenzy opened, and which eventually became a free agent fizzle. The Panthers locking up their trio.
Zito, my goodness.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. Mitch Marner deal was done ahead of time, which left the big name on the board, Nikolai Ehlers, and for whatever reason, it took him several days to finalize the deal with Carolina. So, not exactly a frenzy on July 1st.
No. We saw Brock Besser go, Mikael Granlund. Kudos to Jake Allen, taking a 5-year contract with New Jersey. He seems to be pretty happy over there. So
yeah, his deal was interesting in that what folks were expecting him to get, like in 2 years, he spread over 5, and in order to help the New Jersey Devils make it work, he obviously wanted to stay there, got the same money, just spread out the term.
And it's interesting because we kind of saw John Tavares do something similar in Toronto, that he openly admitted he left money on the table, but he and the family wanted to stay in Toronto. He wanted to stay with the Maple Leafs. And so he was willing to take less to stay there. And so I got to commend that. I got to tip my hat to that. All right, we are going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. We are going to, it is summertime. People are already looking towards next season. And if you're looking at, hey, maybe I'd like to be part of the Rocket Sports team in some aspect, you're gonna hear how that could be possible for you in this first commercial break of ours. And then when we come back, Analyst Chris Peters is in the studio with myself and Rick, evaluating the prospects at Canadiens Development Camp. Another exclusive interview here on the podcast that you do not want to miss. So stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Rocket Sports Media is currently recruiting talented, motivated, and committed people to join our team. If you're a student wishing to gain experience, a young professional interested in broadening your credentials, an experienced hockey mind looking for a platform to share your expertise, or a passionate fan looking to contribute to our publications by connecting with fellow hockey fans, we want to hear from you. If you are bright, loyal, passionate, and willing to dedicate yourself to a remarkable team, email us at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com with "Join our team" in the subject line. We can't wait to hear from you.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. Once again, my name is Amy Johnson. If you would like to follow me over on X, I invite you to do so. My handle there is @FlyersRule. And so follow along. Be sure you also follow Rick over there as well, because his account is also our main Rocket Sports account. So it means his account on X is the main account that you want to follow for all of our written content, our video content, our podcast content, as well as just general tweets throughout the summer and throughout the season of updates from the Canadiens, updates, news, analysis, that type of thing. So you want to follow him at Rocket Sports over on X. You can also follow this podcast specifically on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're just getting started in our 8th season. And so we don't want you to miss a single week. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you prefer to watch the show there as well. Once in a while, I do also do a separate short form video on our YouTube channel as well. That's the only place that you'll see it. So subscribe over there. You can find our YouTube channel at just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com. And if you can, also share this episode with your friends and followers. Okay, so over the past few episodes of the podcast, you've really been treated to some of the best NHL draft coverage available from a Canadiens perspective. We've had, as I mentioned, this will be our 5th exclusive interview over the course of the last 3 weeks. We've had draft experts like Sam Cosentino from Sportsnet, Russ Cohen from Elite Prospects, Jerome Berube from Hockey Prospect, and Michael Augello, all here talking about the draft leading up to the draft. And in this week's show, we're going to shift our focus to the prospects that the Canadiens actually drafted who are now in their pipeline. And so we're joined in this episode by Chris Peters. He's an NHL draft and prospects analyst for Flo Hockey. Chris has been a play-by-play broadcaster for both amateur and pro hockey. His prospect work has appeared at places like Daily Faceoff, CBS, ESPN. He was the former communications coordinator for USA Hockey. He's got a lot of experience, and he has a lot of experience scouting prospects and watching prospects. And so Chris joins us this week to take a deep dive into the 2025 Montreal Canadiens draft class, with a focus on several of the guys who just took part in this week's annual development camp. Well, the dust has started to settle on the 2025 NHL draft, but that does not mean that our coverage of the 2025 NHL draft and the brand new crop of Habs prospects brought into the Canadiens organization is over. Far from it. As we teased on last week's show, we have another tremendous exclusive interview for you today. We are so pleased to have him back on the show because he is a wealth of knowledge about prospects. And today he's going to help us kind of break down some of the names that the Canadiens selected last week. That is none other than Chris Peters is here with us today. He's the content manager for Flo Hockey, an NHL draft and prospects analyst. Super thrilled to have him back on the show. Chris, welcome back, and thank you for being here again.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to be looking in the rearview mirror of a draft for once, which we do enjoy once we get to that stage. But yeah, it's always great to be with you, and yeah, excited to talk.
And with the exception of one of the Canadiens picks, most of them are at the development camp going on in Broussard right now. First of all, looking at, before we talk about individual names, I wonder if you can give us just an overall impression of how the Canadiens did. And I know that you had an article out on Flo Hockey about draft grades. How did you grade the Canadiens, and how did you arrive at that grade that you gave them?
Yeah, so I think part of it was just to kind of give a little bit of an understanding of how grades work in my mind. I think you're always kind of grading on the curve relative to whatever the top teams are getting.
Right.
And this was a year where the top teams had 3 first-round picks. Typically, teams that had 3 first-round picks, that's going to be a lot better than a team that had 0 first-round picks, right? I think.
Well, what was the stat that 8 teams picked in the first round?
Yeah, I mean it was nuts, and it was like it was really one of the stranger kind of things. But I think it also goes to show how eager teams were to get rid of their first round picks this year. It was kind of funny. But I think that so not to beat around the bush, the Habs got a B-. They had 2 first round draft picks. They traded them. They'll feel like they won the day regardless because of getting Noah Dobson on a long-term deal on that trade. And I think that was fair value for what they're getting. In a guy that's going to play at the top of your defensive lineup. So that's one thing. But what they did do is, they got Jurovsky in, with their next pick, their first available pick. I had him, like 46th on my board. He goes a bit earlier than that, but I think it was very fair range. It sounded like, there were definitely some teams that had him considered as a potential first round pick. And then it just kind of what it comes down to next after that in terms of what the Habs did is, they didn't have a lot of early picks. They didn't have a lot of opportunity to make a huge impact. Now they did land players off of my top 100, in this draft, which I think, if you're even the guys that they picked later, like Carlos Handel in round 6 was a guy that made my top 100 this year. So they had a good volume of picks. They obviously made the most of their 3rd round picks, and then, got one of my favorites in LJ Mooney. But a B- mainly because I don't think that you got the same level of impact prospect that other teams did, because other teams had 3 and 4 or very early picks. I mean, the Philadelphia Flyers had 7 picks within the first 57 selections.
Amazing. Yeah, they did.
So that is when you compare what Montreal was even capable of doing, a B- kind of grade is really, not bad.
And very fair, very fair. So let's talk about a few of them. We're gonna build the suspense. We're gonna go in reverse order a little bit. So let's first talk. It's a guy that you actually just mentioned a moment ago. Carlos Handel, picked in the 6th round at 177th overall. Just give us a little bit of background on your thoughts on this selection.
Yeah, so he's an interesting player in that, obviously German players. Not from the power countries. But, I had a chance to see him this year. He played for Halifax last year. I think it was a great opportunity for him to get exposure to North American hockey. And there's some real mobility. He's a 6'1" right shot defenseman, with mobility and puck moving skills. Still needs to work on the defensive elements of the game. I think that's going to come over time. He's kind of had a unique development path in that he was in Germany's, youth system, ends up moving to Sweden and, gets some really good training in the Swedish system, first with Frölunda and then with Malmö. And then he's been a top player for Germany's national team over the last couple of years. And last year he was the captain at the Under-18 Worlds. And actually that was where I felt like we saw glimpses of what Carlos can ultimately be over time, which is to say, I think he could be a middle, towards the end of the lineup defenseman that gives you puck moving options. He retrieves pucks well. He's able to move pucks up ice. And I think with a year of experience in North America, and I believe he will return to Halifax this year, I just think he's on a really nice trajectory. So I had him in that range largely based on the little bit that he played, because he did get injured at the Under-18 Worlds and had his tournament cut short. But based on that small sample of games, I was like, I think there are flashes there. And then when you've got, a right shot defenseman with the ability to move pucks, I think that raises your eyebrows a little bit. So, he was further down my list, quite a ways, down in terms of where I ultimately had him ranked. But he was a player that I think, there's a little more to the player. He's 92 on my top 100. I think there's a little more to this player, and there will be more to learn about him over time.
There was a guy a little bit further up in your list at 77, and in a draft where we saw boatloads of 6'4", 6'5" guys, the Canadiens went in the opposite direction, and in the fourth round got LJ Mooney. And listen, at development camp, if there's anyone who's happier, I haven't been able to find him. He's got a permanent smile on his face and his media availability. On the ice, he was in the first on-ice session, buzzing around the net, found a open ice for a goal. Why is he so excited, and what should Canadiens fans be excited about with respect to LJ Mooney?
So he would have been higher on my list if I wasn't such a realist. Like I love LJ Mooney. So he's the younger cousin of Logan Cooley, coming up in the ranks, even though he was and is basically 5'7". He was the top player in the 2007 birth year for the United States. Not saying a lot because it's a very weak birth year for the country. However, the dynamic elements of his game are as good as anyone in the draft. And I'm talking all those guys in the first round. The dynamic puck skill, skating, playmaking ability that he has is as good as anyone in that first round. What he doesn't have is the size. That's the biggest thing. And I also think if LJ, there were 2 instances this season where he suffered significant injuries on body checks. One cost him the bronze medal game at the Under-18 Worlds. One cost him a good chunk of his season playing against Notre Dame. I was watching that game. It was an open ice hit. It was one of those situations where when you see a smaller player get taken out by a bigger player, that's the reminder that it is not just about that skill and that dynamic element that he has, because at his size, there is the larger risk of injury. And that was definitely in the minds of people here. However, if you are the Montreal Canadiens and you watched him all year as they did, and you have had success drafting smaller players in the past as they have, you see all the elements that he has that does make him maybe an outlier among 5'7" players. I think, 4th round, 113th overall, very similar range to where Johnny Gaudreau was selected by the Calgary Flames in his draft year. I do think that LJ has that kind of upside. It is going to come down to the one thing is that I never saw Johnny get tagged the way that he did this year, and that is a problem. That's the reminder, right? So and I will say though,
if I can
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
with
please.
respect to the physical contact, it's not always that Mooney's being targeted. He initiates a lot of the physical contact as well.
You are 100% right. One of my favorite plays of the entire draft season, and it actually negatively impacted somebody else's draft stock for me. He absolutely crushed Radi Murtka at the Under-18 Worlds. Radi Murtka is 6'6", a full foot taller than him. Yeah. And he took him down into the boards. The thing about LJ, and the reason that I say that he's an outlier, is not only is he this dynamically skilled player, he's a dog. Like, this kid is absolutely unrelenting, fearless. That energy that you saw from him at development camp, not only that is his default setting for one, and that is also, there's just a real love for the game and the player. I think he has a chance to make it. I think that you think about guys like he is a bit smaller than Johnny Gaudreau was when he reached the NHL. I don't know if there's a lot of growth left. I know that was a question that it was asked. You got to grow, and obviously Lane Hudson went to great lengths to make sure that he was able to maximize whatever height he was going to get. But LJ is going to go to the University of Minnesota next year, and he's the best player in their recruiting class. It's actually a very below average recruiting class for Minnesota this year. However, I think he's going to be a significant impact player the same way that Logan Cooley was at Minnesota. I don't think he'll necessarily score as much as Logan Cooley did, but he's going to be a very important player there. I loved the pick. I was not surprised to see who picked him. I was like, well, if it's not going to be the Habs, maybe it'll be the Lightning. Maybe it'll be, the Hurricanes, some teams that aren't scared of size because the talent is so great. I hope he makes it because he is a delight to be around. But on top of that, he is a highly competitive individual, and he is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think Habs fans are going to take to him very quickly.
I think they're already doing that easily. Just watching a clip, the development camp inter-squad scrimmage is going on right now, and he is just zigging, zagging, cutting, deking, and then just set up Tyler Thorpe for a big fat goal. So I think he's already making a splash at development camp. Let's now move up to round 3. The 81st overall selection for the Montreal Canadiens was Bryce Pickford. Tell us a little bit more about Bryce Pickford.
Yeah, well, he had a really tremendous season for Medicine Hat, which was the WHL champion, and he was a significant piece of their championship run and going to the Memorial Cup. And it was the offensive elements of his game, but I also liked the nail gun that he was at times. He plays really competitive. He's another 6'1" right shot defenseman. He had 20 goals this year, almost a point per game during the regular season, over a point per game in the playoffs. He had 2 goals in their first win at the Memorial Cup as well, and was playing a ton in their eventual loss to London. They beat him once and then lost to him the next time, but he was playing massive minutes. The thing about Bryce Pickford, he is a re-entry. He's a second year eligible. He also went all the way through waivers in the WA. He was sorry, not that. He went through getting traded in the WHL, and there, that he wasn't ever what we saw this season in Seattle. And Seattle had great WHL teams that he was on and, was kind of faded into the background. You always have to take what a 18-year-old does relative to the draft class with a bit of a grain of salt. You should expect them to produce more. But I think it was more about the role that he played this year in Medicine Hat as a top pairing defenseman, as a guy that was going to be an offensive contributor, a 20-goal scorer. I think all of those things were unexpected for him this season. He was going to be an important player, but was he going to be a top player? You always look at team quality and the things, and it says, okay, is he a product of team quality, or was he making some of his own plays? And I think what we saw is improved maturity in his game, improved hockey sense, a tremendous competitive drive, and then on top of that, just a real know-how offensively. 20 goals in the regular season, 13 in the playoffs, and that's and plus 2 in the Memorial Cup. So we're talking about a guy, and will that goal scoring translate? I'm not sure. But there's a reason that a re-entry went in the 3rd round. That's a high range for a guy that's a second year eligible. And teams have become much more comfortable with drafting those players because now we have more information about them. I thought it was a good pick. He's a player that I liked, in the draft. It was a guy that I liked, seeing get picked there because I thought that he really did, make a real improvement. He's another guy that was in my top 100. Later in the top 100 because of that re-entry and the older player, but he was a guy that I expected to see drafted, and I was not at all surprised to see him drafted as high as he was.
I'm just going to jump in just for a second and say we should obviously keep talking about these prospects because as we talk about each one, they're doing things successful in the scrimmage. Bryce Pickford just split a pair of defensemen to score a goal for Team White for their first of the game. So go Bryce Pickford.
Well, he's learned how to score goals from 2 goals in 23-24 to 33 when you include the playoff numbers last year, as you just said. Now maybe a player who's not at development camp, but certainly the most exciting, chosen with a draft pick by the Canadiens, and this guy is just pure skill, as I understand.
That's 100% right. He is pure skill. I think anytime you see the Habs, in the in draft a Russian player, and you're saying, okay, well, they must really have a good book on him. Obviously they passed on Michkov, but took Demidov, which says something to you. And then they obviously, they lose their two first round picks, but then they go at 34 and take, another Russian player. And Zhuravsky was a guy, there was a number of Russian players that were considered among the tops this year. Him and Daniel Prokhorov, two very different players in terms of physical makeup and the way that they do things. But 50 points for Zhuravsky this year. As far as under 18 players go in the MHL, he was the top scorer among U18 players. He 24 goals is an awful lot at that level. Even though it's it can be hit or miss in terms of the competitiveness. But I think when
can you explain that, Chris? Because
sure.
The MHL is kind of hard to, as I understand, hard to scout given the disparities in the levels of the teams.
Yes,
and I'll let you explain it.
Yeah. So basically, the MHL in recent years expanded, and in their expansion has watered down the league. So there is your St. Petersburgs and your Locomotives and some of those teams that have top KHL teams. Their MHL teams are pretty well loaded, but then there are a lot of teams that are not necessarily KHL team affiliated that have MHL teams as well. And or they're really kind of down the pecking order, and so you have these opportunities. So you do have to take their statistics in those leagues with a bit of a grain of salt. The good news for Zhuravsky is that we got to see him a little bit in the playoffs in the KHL, which was helpful. That's obviously he played a semi-regular shift in the games that he did play. Now his team did get eliminated from the playoffs, but the fact that he was getting shifts in the playoffs is pretty notable for him. And I think it's you look at the stats and they do tell you a story, but you have to, like, Nikita Kucherov's point totals when he was in the MHL were far more impressive than anyone that's in there now because it was a tougher league then. But the other thing is that there's enough competitive games and there's enough video on these guys that you can see the things that they do that allow them to be successful. And I think for Zhuravsky, it completely comes down to tremendous hands, a really good release, not seeing these Russian players in international competition to get a much more even baseline on them has been the challenge for the private sector, or the public scouts, the people that are doing this, mostly off of video because we don't see the Russians. The Habs are in a position where they can have people that are in Russia and can get eyes on these players, and having Nick Bobrov as the guy that's really running things. I think his judgment has been pretty spot on about a lot of these players.
Yeah.
It gives you a little, like, when you see the Habs pick a Russian player, that they have among the best books on that player. So that's I think that's kind of what I come back to is it wasn't surprising to see that he was the first guy that they took.
Now, Zhuravsky, childhood friend of Demidov, and has already said it. He not only wants to be on the same team as his good friend, but would love to be on the same line. Is he on that kind of trajectory? Is that potential possible?
It's tough to say, because I think that, especially really the most that we have to look at with him is his MHL time, and there's absolutely flashes of brilliance and things like that, but I think it's early to say that much, that he could be a top line player, because I think that Demidov is going to be a top line player for a long time. But there's absolutely upside in this player to be a top 6 contributing scorer, which if you get that in the early second round, I think you have to be thrilled.
Well, the thing that I love about the kind of post-draft breakdown is it gets you even more excited to watch these prospects in the next year to 2 years, and really kind of sink your teeth into what they're going to do and how they're going to grow and how they're going to progress. And I think gives listeners something to look forward to. There's exciting things happening with the Montreal Canadiens right now, but it's also, a little bit of candy for the future, things to look forward to down the road. And Chris, it's why we really love having you on the show, because you give such a great picture of what the Canadiens are getting in the guys that they have selected. I just want to take a moment while we have you, just to talk a little bit about your work at Flo Hockey and what Flo, our listeners and viewers here at Canadiens Connection know that we've talked about Flo Hockey quite a bit over the past year, because it is where it is the new home of AHL coverage this past season, of course. So all of those Laval Rocket games that we watched to bring coverage, we're watching that on Flo Hockey. Our good friend Patrick Williams, the AHL guru, as Rick has coined him, has a home at Flo Hockey as well. But the Flo Hockey coverage on your platform continues to expand. We've seen just within the last month the announcement that every QMJHL game is going to be available on Flo Hockey this coming season. I just would love to give you an opportunity to talk about that new deal and just remind our listeners and viewers of what different leagues currently are going to be available for a Flo Hockey subscription next year.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for the opportunity, and certainly, this is my 3rd year at Flo Hockey, and when I first started, I was at Daily Faceoff at the time, and I wasn't necessarily it wasn't my full-time job, but it was a part of, the many things that I did. And one of the things that Flo Sports, and which is, we have 20, almost 30 sports that we have coverage for. When they were talking about bringing me in, I was very skeptical, of where they were at that point. They had, They did have the ECHL, which I was fond of, and they had a couple of college conferences, but really not a lot else. And in the time that I've been there, they said, "Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to bring the AHL into the fold. We're going to try to bring, top junior leagues in the fold, the USHL, the QMJHL, the other CHL leagues." And at the time, I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great. How are you going to do that?" And then they kept doing it. So for the last several years, obviously we've been growing exponentially. They did buy Hockey TV right before I was there, and Hockey TV had all of Canadian Junior A and a lot of other leagues, and it was the engine that drove AHL TV. So it wasn't a huge change for AHL to come over, but they went from just being AHL games to now being with everything else. So what we have, we're still going to be the AHL remains a flagship league for us. Obviously, everybody that watched the Laval Rockets, an incredible season, great run that ultimately fell a little bit short. That was on Flo Hockey. Also, Trois-Rivières Lions winning the Kelly Cup this year.
Yeah.
One of the great stories. I mean, really a huge turnaround. They, it was their first year under new ownership, and it went about as well as it could have gone with a championship. So we have the AHL, the ECHL, so all of NHL affiliated minor league hockey is on Flo Hockey. We also have the SPHL, so you basically have the 3 rungs beneath the NHL. We do have college conferences. We'll have a number of other games this year as well. We have Atlantic Hockey America, the USHL, as you mentioned, the Q, which we're so excited about having the Q on there. It's our first opportunity to work with a Canadian Hockey League organization. It was a great process with the Q to kind of bring them into the fold. We're going to have bilingual coverage of the league on Flo Hockey as well. Every single Q game, all their main big events will be on Flo Hockey. And, so the nice thing is as this is happening, we're adding all of these leagues, but the price hasn't gone up, like that's so basically every time we add a new league, your subscription gets a lot more value. And I would highly recommend to anybody that hasn't yet, check it out. You could do the monthly subscription, but it is a lot cheaper on a you pay the annual fee up front, but the breakdown monthly ends up being, much less than a monthly subscription. And with the amount of hockey that we have on our platform, which also includes, a number of BCHL, OJHL, the MHL, the Maritime League, and also Canadian high schools, the Canadian Sports School League. There's so much of a chance to see the future of the game on Flo Hockey, and so I highly recommend getting an annual subscription. Maybe start it in September when everything starts rolling, and then you'll have it all the way through the playoffs and everything else going into next season. But it's been to work at a company that is invested in hockey the way that Flo has at this time in this volatile media landscape is honestly, I can't believe it. That there is a company out there that cares this much about the sport that we love so much. And that was the vision that I was sold on to be there. They've delivered in so many ways, and there should be a few more announcements coming this summer that I'm super excited about, that I think hockey fans will be excited about. And really, the goal has been to become the essential destination for hockey beneath the NHL, and we are ever closer to really accomplishing that.
Well, that sounds tantalizing.
Exciting,
love that teaser. Yes, congratulations to all of you at Flo Sports. And I think it's been something that's been needed for a long time, is to have a central place to get to watch hockey that's not NHL hockey for fans who really do want to see those up and coming players as they progress through their young careers. So if you haven't done so already, if you want to check it out, what is the website for Flo Hockey for people to visit?
Yep, flohockey.tv. You can also get the Flo Sports app. So if you're, we have many sports. So the app is Flo Sports, but the website is flohockey.tv, and you can sign up right there. Or you could just read all of the content, which is free on there. And we have a lot of original video as well. So we've got a lot of things cooking up for next season. So hopefully you'll check us out and give us a shot.
Perfect. And at the very least, you need to be following Chris on X. You can find him at Chris M. Peters. He is a wealth of information all throughout the year regarding prospects and so forth. So be sure you're following him there. And Chris, we just can't thank you enough. We know this is kind of finally now winding down after the draft. It's been a busy season. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time to sit with us again. And we certainly look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, looking forward to the next time we get together.
Well, there was a lot of information there. What I like about Chris, you mentioned communications coordinator for USA Hockey formerly. He's able to communicate clearly, concisely, a lot of information about these prospects. That's what he does. He's a prospect analyst for Flo Hockey, and is able to look at the prospects who were selected by the Montreal Canadiens and provide to our listeners the very best information. He's seen a lot of each of these players as they played in their junior career, and he will continue following them throughout.
was not the first time we've had Chris on the show. It certainly will not be the last, and we're going to have him back sooner than next summer. So hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss the next time he's on the show. That also sets up this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. This is our chance to hear from all of you who are listening and watching the show. We want to know the answer to this question. And if you send in your response, we're going to pick your best responses and read them out on next week's show for all of Habs fandom to hear. And so this week we're asking you this: which Habs prospect impressed you the most at development camp this week, and why? This is one of those, show your work things. Which Habs prospect impressed you the most at development camp this week, and why? How do you send in your response? Well, it's easy. If you're watching on YouTube, just drop it down in the comments. If you follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Habs Connection, you can send us a reply or a DM there. Or the fastest way to do it is simply to send us a text on the Rocket Sports text line, which is 5853-ROCKET. You can always text us 24/7 on that number, 5853-ROCKET, whether it's answering the question of the week or if you have a question of your own or a comment or feedback or just something that you want to say, something you want to vent about the Canadiens. Leave it there, and we'll certainly consider sharing it with all the rest of our listeners here on the show. And so with that, we are going to take our final break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. And when we come back, we're going to get you all set for the week ahead before our next episode. So stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. Drop us an email at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com for further details and information regarding this unique marketing opportunity.
Welcome back to episode 355 of the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget, drop us a comment and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, InsideTheCanadiens.com. And hey, in case you didn't know, we have a new home for our written content this summer and this coming season. We are very proud to have joined the ranks of the brand new website, which has just launched within the last month or so, hockeyhotstove.com, bringing together, it's founded by former NHLer Chris Therien, as well as Bill Meltzer, who is among the elite in the journalism field, particularly covering the Philadelphia Flyers, as well as Michael Jello, and they have pulled together some really top-notch journalists with a lot of experience in the industry, covering all 32 teams, plus some, and we are very pleased to have joined their crew, bringing all of the Montreal Canadiens coverage at Hockey Hot Stove. So make sure you head over to hockeyhotstove.com. You can find coverage for any NHL team there. Our particular content is in the Habs section, obviously. So you can either go there and click on the Habs logo to find our content, or if you just directly want to get there via habshotstove.com, that's just bookmark that. Put that as one of your startup tabs for whenever you open your computer to check in every day. And also be sure on Hockey Hot Stove, there is a tab called Forums, and it is really a fun place. You want to get in on the forums. Twitter, social media has just become a nightmare for fans to actually legitimately talk to one another and have conversations and friendly debate and that type of thing, whether it's about their own team or other teams, the league in general. And the forums over at hockeyhotstove.com are the place to be to do that. They're very popular. There's lots of conversations going on all the time. People making new friends, getting into some friendly arguments about some debates in choices that are made and so forth. So it's a great place for you to have your voice be heard as well. So be sure to check that out over at Hockey Hot Stove.
And I think that there's certainly going to be some debate about my first look at the possible Canadiens lineup for 2025-26. You can tell us your selections, who you want to see in the lineup. But just a bit of a preview. If you go to habshotstove.com, our senior writer, Chris G, is going to be putting out his way too early look at the Canadiens opening night lineup. And I guarantee you that Chris's lineup's going to be different than mine. It usually is. So you'll want to see that coming up in a couple of days at habshotstove.com. Absolutely.
You can also leave your answer to this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week in the forum or as a comment on the story that goes along with this podcast over at hockeyhotstove.com. I should mention before I remind folks about that, our podcast is also available through hockeyhotstove.com. If that's how you choose to listen, but there are a bevy of other podcasts as well. So click the podcast tab. You'll get podcasts on other teams as well. Really great resource for you there. But this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week that we want you to answer, don't forget, which Habs prospect impressed you the most at development camp and why? Was it one of the newcomers? Was it a guy who's been there before? Who stood out to you? Who impressed you? Who wowed you? Who got you really excited about their play? And what did they do to make you feel that way? We want to know, and we're going to take all of your best answers and read them out right here on next week's show. And yes, that'll be next week, Saturday, July 12th. As we said, we are not going anywhere. We're here every week, all summer long, all season long. So we'll be back again next Saturday, July 12th for the next episode. We hope that you are here with us as well. In the meantime, just enjoy the summer, enjoy the week, and get ready to have another podcast episode reliably available for you to listen to next week, right here on the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.